I wanted to talk about, how you can understand all this from a certain framework. And that's what I wanted to speak about. The truth is that we know that there's a certain relationship that the Jewish people have with the Satan. And that is that there is a source that comes down, Kedusha, holiness, and that's what enables everything to survive. And really it goes to the Jewish people. However, it can go to the Satan. It depends, it's up to the Jews. If the Jews do mitzvot, then that Kedusha, it's called a shefa or hashpo, it's a divine flow. That if the Jews do the mitzvot and Torah and so on, then that flow goes to the Jews. And the Satan is denied that flow of holiness. So he grows weak. If, however, the Jews sin, then that flow of holiness goes to the Satan, and he gains, and he becomes tremendously powerful, and the Jews, however, become very weak. So we have this kind of back and forth in terms of what's called the Kedusha, how it goes. And the truth is that the fortunes of history all depend on this, back and forth flow. In many ways, it's like a seesaw. When one side is up, then the other side is down, and vice versa. When the other side is up, then the other side is down, so on. Okay. Now, in the world, when the Satan does get the Yoniko, it means when he does get this Kedusha, because the Jews are sinning, then he has what's called a Bechor. He has a major nation, you see, that he can encourage and empower to do his bidding. And that's where he argues in their favor, you see. So that's called the Bechor of the Satan. That is sort of like his firstborn, although it doesn't mean literally firstborn, but it does mean he's sort of like a 4-star general. That most of the evil that he wants to argue against the Jews, he filters through this nation. Now, in the history of mankind, we know also that when the Jews sin, then their sin gives the Satan this tremendous power. And this power, of course, is Kedusha. We know that. And what God has done is he has assigned 8 different nations that when the Jews deserve in some way to be punished, which means that they will suffer, then it is these nations, each one becomes a Bechor to the Satan. And it is to this nation, you see, that the Jews will suffer. Now what's interesting is that God will always take Bechor of the Satan, since the Shefa is coming down in tremendous quantity to this nation, because the Satan is the one who doles out that Shefa that he wins in Besdin, in the court, in heaven, when he accuses the Jews of sinning. So all the Shefa comes to him, and he, of course, filters it to that nation that at that time is the firstborn, so to speak, or the 4-star general of the Satan. You see how, and that's a very important idea. That is why many times you will see that there is always a supernation that somehow the Jews are involved. Let me take a look, We have the first nation, of course, is Egypt, Mitzrayim. And even though God said that the Jews will be in a nation that they don't know for 400 years, he was referring to whoever the Bechor of the Satan will be in that day, which of course then turned out to be Egypt. So Egypt, of course, was a super nation. At that time, it was the greatest nation on earth. And the Jews, of course, found themselves in Egypt. So, like I say, at that time, Egypt was the Bechor, was the super nation. Because that nation that the Satan brings all the Shefa, that becomes tremendously great in every which way, militarily, in terms of civilization. They become the greatest. And it's always the job of that super nation, to afflict the Jews when they deserve punishment. So the first one that this happened to, of course, was Egypt, which, of course, afflicted the Jews in a terrible way. Then it was transferred, because Egypt was destroyed, and it went over to, of course, Babylon, you see. So when the Jews left Egypt, they were on a very high plane of spirituality, ruchnius. So the Bechor, or the firstborn, wasn't the Satan's firstborn, rather it was the Jews. That's why the Jews had a tremendous monarchy. They had Shaul, they had Shlomo HaMelech, David HaMelech, and so on. And for many years, they had for hundreds of years. Because really, most of the Kedusha was in the hands of the Jews, much more so than in the hands of the Satan. However, because the Jews sinned terribly with Avodah Zarah, of course we know that they split, right? They split, which means that part of the Jewish nation went into exile. The Assyrians become very great. They were then the Bechor of the Satan, and they exiled the 10 tribes. And things continued. What does that mean, they continued? They continued when the Jews again sinned, because they were oived avodah zarah. They worshipped idols, worse and worse. And finally, the nation called Babylon, Bovel, became the Bechor of the Satan under Nebuchadnezzar. You see. So because of that, he was able to afflict the Jews. But even worse, he was able to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. Now you should know one thing, that the Beis HaMikdash isn't so much a temple or a house. What it really is, it's a reflection of the divine presence to the Jewish people. Because that's what it means, that the Kedusha was mostly to the Jews. And the proof of that is because they had the Beis HaMikdash, which had the Shekhinah, the divine presence. Because at that time, the Jews were a very great, righteous, and holy nation. But as time went on, right, where did the Shekhinah go? It left. That indicates, right, that if the Shekhinah left, right, it means that the Shefa, the ability to take or yoinek, nourish from the tremendous Kedusha, it went to the hands of the Satan. And he would give it out to the Bechor of the Satan at that time, which was Babylon. You see. So when you look at the destruction of the first temple, what you're really looking at is the diminishment of the Shekhinah in the hands of the Jews. And you're looking at the transfer of that to the Satan's Bechor, which is Nebuchadnezzar, you see. And that's also simultaneous, basically, with the destruction of the temple. There was a tremendous diminishment of a Jew's ability to access the Kedusha through Nevuah, prophecy. Because that's what really prophecy is. Prophecy is when the Kedusha, the holiness of the Jew, right, is so much in the hands of the Jews that he can become a prophet. He merely has to go through the proper training. But he can access the Shekhinah, and that's really what prophecy is, because the Shekhinah is really in the hands of the Jews. They have the repository of tremendous Kedusha. You see? So when they turned to Avodah Zarah, which was very bad, right, then what happened is that they lost the Beit HaMikdash, and they lost the ability to access the Shekhinah through Kedusha. So what you're looking at really is the transfer of the Kedusha, that what's called that Hashkafa, that divine flow from the Jewish people to the Satan, to the Bechor of the Satan, who are of course the Goyim, which is Nebuchadnezzar. You see, that's really what's happening. And that's why it says in Echo, it says in Echo, which is interesting. It says, Soreha umalkeho bagoyim, that her princes, the princes of the Jews, right, umalkeho, and her kings, right, bagoyim, are now amongst the Gentiles, right, v'gam nevieho leimotzu chazoin, right, and the Nevi'im also find no visions. Ain't Torah, there's no Torah. So what that really means is, what you're really looking at is it's like a contest, that there's a certain reservoir of Kedusha, and there's an eternal fight between the Satan and the Jewish people. So for hundreds of years, the Jews had access to that, you see, because when they left Egypt, they became the Bechor, which is said clearly in Shemot. I mean, that's really the Parsha we're in, where the Bechor, which was Egypt, got transferred to the Jews, and they became the Bechor, not of the Satan, but they became the general of the reservoir of the Kedusha, which is really the Shekhinah. That's why the Jews are called the Bechor, you see. So you had the Bechor of Egypt that was now transformed or transferred to the Bechor of the Jews. But like I say, so they had that incredible Kedusha, and therefore they had the Beit HaMikdash. Not only that, they also had Nevuah, prophecy, for hundreds of years, probably something like 600-700 years. It's a long time, you see. But eventually what happened was the 10 tribes, they really sunk because of Yerovam ben Nevat and so on, and all those, the 10 kings, eventually the 10 tribes. So therefore that Kedusha, or their ability to access that Kedusha and have the Beit HaMikdash and have the Nevuah, prophecy, the ability to access prophecy, that failed. So they went into exile, you see, because the Satan was able at that point in time to build up his Bechor, and his Bechor, of course, was Sancheiriv, which is Assyria, you see. But there was still a tremendous amount of Kedusha left in the Jewish people, but not among the 10 tribes. It was among Yehuda, you see. So you still have the kings of Judah, and the Kedusha was still there until ultimately they also fell. They became Oived Avodah Zarah, right? And then all of it went from Assyria into Nebuchadnezzar, which is Babylon. And because of that, you had the destruction of the temple, which, like I said, is the transfer of the Kedusha, the powerful force, divine energy of the Shekhinah, and that went over to the Satan, you see. So the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, you see. And then the Jews lost it. However, what was interesting is because of the Ness of Purim, you see, somehow they got a tremendous amount back. Why? Because, you know the story of Purim, of course. Because what happened in Purim is because of the tshuva that Esther had them do. Remember, they fasted for 3 days, and they all did incredible tshuva, you see. And they did the tshuva, and as a result of that, an enormous amount of shefa, of Kedusha, was restored to the Jewish people. In fact, to such an extent where had the Jews come back with Ezra, when he came back to Eretz Yisrael, to build, when he came back and built the Beit HaMikdash Sheni, the second one, since they had tremendous access to the Shekhinah, right, then Ezra could have been the Mashiach ben Yosef. That's how much Kedusha they had. But because only 70,000 Jews came back with him, that became limited, you see. So not only was there a limitation, because, 70,000 Jews came back and the rest stayed in Babylon, therefore the amount of Shekhinah that came down also was limited, you see. And that is why there was no Nevuah in the Second Temple era, you see. And not only that, but there were many things missing. The Oren was missing. The V'Tumim was missing. A lot of stuff missing in the second Beit HaMikdash, you see. However, there was a tremendous Kedusha, like I said, because of the tshuva that the Jews did by Esther, you see. Unfortunately, it wasn't complete, but it was enough where it tremendously elevated the Jewish people, you see. So, what caused that to happen was the Bechor of the Sultan was Persia, Ahasuerus, and then, of course, Haman, you see. And like I say, they were able to restore a great deal of the Shekhinah, and therefore they were able to build the Beit HaMikdash. However, that didn't last that long, right? And as a result of the fact that the Jews did sin, right, and so on, then they built up another nation. They became the Bechor, right? And that was, of course, Yavon, Greece. And Greece, again, right, what was their main thrust? Their main thrust, of course, was to destroy the Beis HaMikdash in the sense that they wouldn't destroy the temple. What they would do is put a Greek idol in the temple and have the Jews bow to it, you see. However, what is interesting, they didn't destroy the Beit HaMikdash, not at all. Why? Because the Jews still were holy and righteous enough where a great deal of the Shekhinah remained with them, you see. And as a result of that, the Greeks could only damage the temple. It couldn't destroy the temple because the Jews, again, were still on a very high level, and therefore the Shekhinah remained with them, right? However, what did happen is there was enough diminishment of the Shekhinah, you see, where the Greeks could metamei, they could defile the temple. And at that time, the Greeks were the Bechor. They were the major, it's like the major general or the agent. The major agent of the Satan, of course, was the Greeks. And that went on for a while. And there was obviously a lot of sinning. Because tragically, a lot of the Jews at the time of Greece liked the Greek culture. Look, the Greeks were a very physical nation. You had the Olympics, you had plays, which the Greeks are famous for, you had the architecture, you had the literature. Look, Greece was the modern version of today. That's where modern culture comes from, Greece. So unfortunately, a great deal of the Jews, they called the Messiavnim, the people, the Hellenists, they became enamored from a Greek, not just religion, but the Greek culture. And they, in many ways, abandoned Judaism, you see. Therefore, the Satan, again, was unique, right? Because, again, you have the Messiavnim that want Greek culture and religion as opposed to Judaism. Therefore, the Greeks collapsed, and what happened is Rome took over Greece. Rome is really an expression, or rather an expansion of Greece, because Rome adapted the Greek culture in many ways. They didn't really initiate that much of their own. But what they did is they took the Greek understanding of the world, you see, and they brought it out to the entire world. They spread it throughout the entire world. I mean, Alexander was first. He spread it throughout the entire. You see, but the ones who really did that, not just Alexander, the Greeks, but Rome. Rome conquered. You see, the entire world, and therefore they spread out the Greek culture. However, the problem then was this, is that enough of the Jews sinned, where there was a severe diminishment of the Kedusha of the Beit HaMikdash. This was the problem, which was really in many ways identical to Babylon. Because like I said, because of the tremendous avodah zarah of the Jews, then Bavel, the Shekhinah, was enormously reduced. And therefore, they were able to take away the Shekhinah from them, from us, and destroy the Beit HaMikdash, which is the residence of the Shekhinah amongst us, you see. So Rome, therefore, Jews sinned enough because of a lot of things that they were doing, and they succeeded also in destroying the Beit HaMikdash. Same idea. Because Rome became the Bechor of the Sultan. And that's what happened with Rome. That the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. Rome is the Bechor, the firstborn. Rome became the major agent of the Satan, you see. And as a result of that, they have been in charge because they have been yonik substantially from the Kedusha of the Jewish people. In fact, to such an extent, when you think about it, how much Rome, which is the Bechor of the Satan, which is really Esau, we know, right? Because the Torah says that Esau is Edom, that's the Torah, and the Gemara says that Edom is Rome. So Rome is really, the origin of Rome is really Esau. So Esau now assumed, finally, the Bechor status, you see. And therefore, they have been the Bechor of the Satan throughout the last 2,000 years. It's a long time. Now, what's interesting is that since Rome is Esau, you see, you find, what you don't find in the religion of Babylon or Greece or Persia, but what you do find is the religion of Rome. That Rome became, from a pagan, they became Christian. Now, even though Christian at a certain level is pagan, because they believe in more than one deity, even though they say that God is the real deity, and Yeshua is his son, and whatever, the Holy Ghost and all that kind of stuff, whatever. But what's interesting is that they now had enough Kedusha in them to fashion Christianity as a sort of, not a mirror image, but a very weak representation of the Torah. And that is because they believe in what? They believe in one God with two subsidiaries, whatever. They also believe in a Messiah. You see, before that, there was no concept of a messianic figure. But they believe in a Messiah, and they have spread this concept, right, that there will be an age, a messianic age. There will be an end of time, you see, that the world will change, and the kingdom of heaven, as they call it, will return to the earth. Now, in many ways, that is a core belief, right, which we believe, but we believe, of course, Tchias HaMesim, and they have their own version of Tchias HaMesim. I think it's called the rapture, whatever. But the main idea is that their religion, Christianity, right, has a certain interesting Kedusha underneath it, because that's what they stole from the Jews, you see. And as a result of that, their religion spread many ideas of Torah across the world, which is really what the Jews should have done. Now, who says this? The Rambam. No greater figure than the Rambam says this, that really the Jews were supposed to spread the belief in basically one God, and the concept of a redemption, the concept of a Messiah, right? And the concept that there will be a kingdom of heaven, so to speak, a messianic age, where only good will happen. That's what they are saying. So in that sense, it is a mini message, which is very similar, of course, to the Torah in that respect. And they're the ones who are spreading it, which is amazing. Now, why? Because the answer is that because they are Esav, Edom, you see, Edom, Esav, was Jewish. So therefore, when he took the Kedusha, you see, and he became the Bechor, he has a much greater likeness to the Jews than the previous ones, which were much more pagan in their belief. So therefore, the one who is the Bechor of the Satan, you see, and therefore has been yonik from the Kedusha of the Jewish people, is Christianity, you see. And this is true. They have been the major agent of the Satan, the Bechor, for 2,000 years. And then finally, of course, we know that Rome, that used to be pagan, Rome now became Christian, you see. So Rome now turned into Christianity. And Christianity is really the Bechor of the Satan today, especially in the form of Western civilization, you see. Now, this is true, of course. These are the klipot. So what do we have so far? But you understand what's going on. That there's always a contest between us, the Jews, and the Satan for this incredible reservoir or flow, this divine flow and divine energy. You see, there's always this contest. And the history of the Jewish people, many ways, is all about, well, do we have this Kedusha, or does the Satan have the Kedusha? So when we have it, then we have the Beit HaMikdash, we have a tremendous amount of Torah, which is exactly what happened, and so on. We had the Torah for what? We had the Gemara, the Talmud Bavli, the Yerushalmi. All of that was written when we were much higher, you see. But since we are in Galut, what the Galut really is that the Kedusha is now in the hands of the Goyim, Christianity. And that's why the major Galut of the Jewish people is in the Christian countries, because they have the Kedusha. So they have been the Bechor of the Satan for 2,000 years. And not only do we not have a Beit HaMikdash, which itself indicates a tremendous diminishment of the Shekhinah, but the fact that we are under their, control and under their persecutions and so on, that clearly is indicative that they have this Kedusha and we are subservient to them. And this has been going on for thousands of years, you see. Now, as we come toward the end, the Satan begins to lose all that Kedusha, and what happens is it goes back to the Jews, you see. So what the Jews are doing in the last 2,000 years is squeezing out all that Kedusha that the Satan has. We've been doing it almost 2,000 years, you see. And we've been squeezing it out with the three basic processes. One is mitzvot. When the Jew is mitzvah, right, then he brings down Kedusha. When the Jew does tshuva, then he takes it out of the hands of the Satan. And then when he suffers, Yisurin, he takes more out of the hands of the Satan. So what the Golus has done, basically, it has taken away an enormous amount of the Kedusha of the Satan to such an extent where the Satan is dying. That's really what's happening, you see. And right now, he has very weak Bechorot, you see. But he still has or at least previously had, three of them. The first Bechor of the Satan still remains Esav, which is Edom and Rome and so on, and Christianity. So he still has that. But what is interesting, and then of course the second one is Ishmael, is the Arabs, and the third one is the Erev Rav, which are Jews. Now let's take a look at the Christianity. What is interesting is that the Christians, and there's a reason for this, for 1,500 years, they were able to terribly persecute the Jews. You're talking about crusades, pogroms, right? You're talking about expulsions, terrible inquisitions. I mean, it's incredible. But since the Satan has been losing all this Kedusha, the Esav or Edom, right, which are the basic Christians, they get weaker, which means that they no longer really have the power to afflict the Jewish people. And one of the major things that have stopped them from persecuting the Jewish people, you'd be surprised to hear, is what is called democracy. Because democracy removes kings. It removes tyrants, you see, and it puts the people in charge. And coupled with that, you have the Renaissance and the Reformation. And therefore people, even though it still continues at a certain level, but democracy, or the rule of people as opposed to the rule of kings, you see, has tremendously reduced the ability of Christianity to kill the Jews, which they've been doing for thousands of years, you see, especially with the pogroms and the persecutions. And of course, we've seen that with the Holocaust and so on. But you see, but what has happened, because they are losing their access to the Shekhinah, therefore they cannot make the Jews suffer as much. And democracy put a hold on it. And that's why democracy has become so widespread in the last 200 years. You see, ever since the French Revolution, 1792, and then you have the American Revolution in 1776. So the rule of the people has severely diminished the ability of Christianity as a major klipa to really harm the Jews. It's a very important idea, and that is why democracy is here, to stop or to break the terrible influence that the Satan has in terms of Christianity, you see. Now, besides that, that's the first klipa, which is this klipa is still here, but is severely diminished. The second klipa, of course, are the Arabs, Ishmael, you see. And they also have been able to subjugate the Jewish people in many ways, in a terrible way, you see. But what is interesting about all that is they also are ending their ability. Because take a look, you see, they now recognize that they have to become part of what's called the 21st century, you see. And that's what they want to become. So all of a sudden, lo and behold, right, we have the Tov Shebesa, which we know as Trump, actually has created a situation where there are many Arab nations that want to now ally themselves with Israel. And that is the beginning of the tshuva of Esav, which again is of Yishmael, and that again is the diminishment of the Shekhinah in the hands of Yishmael, you see, in the sense that they are no longer able to persecute the Jews. And that really started, in 1990, right, when many of the Jews from Iraq, Iran, and Syria, a lot of the Sephardic Jews were actually able to leave the Arab countries, you see, because they no longer have what they used to have, access to the divine flow of holiness, which means that they are no longer a Bechor of the Satan, you see. And because of that, they can no longer afflict the Jews the way they used to. Yes. So they are also changing, you see. And that brings me to the last klipa of before the Messianic era, and that is the era of Rav. Now, the era of Rav is a whole discussion, you see, right? We'll talk about that next week. And what you are going to hear next week is an understanding that what you are seeing now in terms of what's happening to America is not so much about America, although there is that which is going on in America. There's no question. What's happening there is that we are watching, at least so far, I mean, I hope you girls are right, but we are watching the return or the resurrection of the Ra Shebe'esav over the Toiv Shebe'esav. And I want to go to it next week is an understanding of the era of Rav and what part they play in history and how what is really happening today is not so much about Edom, right? It's really about the era of Rav, as you will see. So next week I will continue this year to explain what is happening, you see. Now this week should be an incredible week. You know, if Trump is going to make his comeback, I'm sure he's going to do it this week. I hope you girls are right. But so far, you now have a background, you see, and that is that the Shefa, the divine flow, is slowly returning to the Jewish people. So the Satan doesn't really have a Bechor, you see. And that is why, in the end of time, you really need all three. You need this. You need the Edom, or the Ra Shebe'esav, right? You need Yishmael, the Muslims, and you need the Erev Rav, which are the Jews, as we will see, that want to break the bond with God. That's why you need all three, you see, because all of them, each of them, can no longer sustain the firstborn of the Satan. So you need all three to do the job. But we are watching the dissolution of all three. And that's what I want to talk about to continue. Any questions?
Wait, Rabbi, you just gave the class. Can you say that it's in memory of my brother Moshe ben Sarah? It's his end of the year this week.
Moshe ben what?
Sarah.
Who is this, Rachel?
Yeah, it's my brother. His end of the year is on Friday. He passed away.
Okay, yeah. The Shiur should be...
Of Shvat.
Okay, the Shiur should go for the Schut, the Aliyat Neshama of Moshe ben...
Sarah.
Ben Sarah. Well, actually, what's his father's name?
Ezra.
Ezra?
Yeah, we do it. Yes, Ezra.
Well, when after they're dead, you go after the father. Moshe ben Ezra. Yeah, should be a schut for the Aliyah Nishama.
The Sephardim go always according to the mother.
Okay, Moshe ben Sarah or Moshe ben Ezra, whichever way works. You know.
Amen.
Yes.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you think that the way the Pashiyah are falling out is correlating, not coincidence, because Hashem really doesn't work with coincidences, but correlating very well to what we're seeing today?
Actually, it does. It correlates with two things. One is Parshat Shemot, which I have been using extensively in my Shiurim as the model. And the second thing it correlates is Tevet, which is the month of Esav. And this Wednesday, or not Wednesday, Thursday, this Thursday is Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Yes, so we are now, and Tu B'Shvat, which is coming up in about whatever, is the end of the Shlita of Esav. And it begins the Inyan of Yosef. So you really have two things going on. You have the beginning of the end of the Mazal of Esav, which is Tevet, which is the goat. And you also have the Parshat Shemot for Ero, right? and of course Bo B'Shalach, which is of course Yetzias Mitzrayim, which also is the end of the Klippa. So I would certainly agree with you, that these two parashot are very timely. That's definitely true.
Okay, so if Hashem came to Moshe in the burning bush this past week in Shemot, is there a possibility that he came to the Mashiach? And
it's a possibility. Yeah.
Do you think Yosef, Mashiach ben Yosef, knows who he is already?
Well, that's really what she's asking. If the burning bush is really to inform, what do I think?
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe not. He would certainly know. What was that?
I didn't get a good answer. That's not a good answer.
As far as I'm concerned, I feel he definitely lives today. There is a man who lives today who is the Mashiach ben Yosef, who will be the real Mashiach ben Yosef. I'm sure he suspects that he is something, extraordinary, and he doesn't understand what is happening. And last Shiur I gave, not here, but the 10 days ago, the Shiur I gave on current event, he suffers in the concept of Bekarnov, that he cannot express his enormous potential in Ruchdiyut, spirituality. So I'm sure that he knows there's something going on. As to whether he knows definitively, because the Rabbi Shalom spoke to him, that is unknown. But you should know one thing: when he does know, that is the Aschalta de Gula. So the moment he knows what the real story is, that is the real Aschalta de Gula. You see. But what is happening now, basically, is what's called, as I mentioned in that Shia, Tachat Pano. This is all to accelerate the process. The Jews fundamentally do not deserve, really, based on their merits, they don't really deserve to be redeemed, like I mentioned. But since the Jewish people are so far down, Mem Tet Shari Tuma, that this is called a crisis. It's an emergency, you see, that God has to bring the Mashiach, because the world is falling apart in many ways. We don't even imagine how. But, like I say, I believe that we are very, very close to the actual Aschalta de Geula. And the good news is once that happens, then that is unstoppable and irreversible. That is the equivalent of, in Shemot, Vayeda Elokim, and God knew. And knowledge is Yesoid, right? And God knew, which means he wanted to join Yesoid to Malchut. Yes. And that is the Geula. You see? So,
Rabbi, will he be using Pakod Pakadati so that we know that that's him the same way?
Yes, undoubtedly, he will. Yes, the real question is, who's going to tell it to?
That's my question.
In those days, you had Egypt.
The elders.
Exactly, there was a whole group of elders. The greatest of them was Amram. With Yocheved, Amram, the father of Moshe Rabbeinu. So he could tell it to him.
Maybe the Gedolei Hador. Maybe the Gedolei Hador now.
Yeah, but today, who are the Gedolei Hador? We are losing so many Gedolim. It's just incredible.
And they said that before Mashiach, a lot of the rabbis will be part of the Erev Rav.
Yes. That's called the small Erev Rav. The Erev Rav Zeira that the Zohar talks about. That's right, yeah. And there are, unfortunately, there are a lot of...
Yeah, that's why we've seen, like, within the last 10 years, the rabbis that have been caught with such horrible things.
Yeah. And therefore, the question is, who's he going to say it to? There's hardly any gedolim, real gedolim left. You can count them on the fingers.
Rabbi Kanievsky? Yeah, you could count them on your fingers.
Correct. Yeah. Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky is the last, I think, of the true gedolim. He's a true gadol. He's not a relative gadol. He's an absolute gadol. There's a difference. An absolute gadol is a gadol in any generation, basically. A relative gadol is relative to everybody else. He's a gadol.
Right.
See?
That generation.
Right.
Yeah, in that generation, yeah. So, Rabbi Chaim is certainly one of the few. I mean, there are certain gedolim that are incredible. I believe Ovadia Yosef was one of them. Yeah. He was a true gadol. Yeah.
Sure.
These are true gedolim. In any generation, they would stand out. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, or Rabbi, it's all, but today, I believe, like I say, the only true gadol, I believe, is Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky. I'm not that familiar with the Sephardic gedolim. I'm hoping that there's at least one, maybe two.
There are.
I'm not familiar with them, so I don't really.
Rabbi
I don't know.
Shlomo Amar is definitely.
He's the Rav of Yerushalayim, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm not that familiar, but I'm sure there must be true gedolim among the Sephardim also, but there's very few left. I mean, every day you pick up the newspaper, the Jewish newspaper.
Another one passes.
Another one passed
Corona.
away. It's incredible. They're just dying left and right from corona. I'm not saying they're gedolim, but they are very choshev people. Yeah. Very choshev people. And God is like, what Moshe is doing is incredible. He's like cleaning out the whole lot. You see? And these people you don't replace. It takes 70, 80 years to become a man of that type of stature. So we're not talking about people that can be replaced. It has to be.
And by then Mashiach would come, so the time is up.
Exactly. So the question is, when the Rebbeinu Shem does that, when he's cleaning out the place from gedolim, then who's he leaving? So that's how that's one of the simonim, the signs that that we are right before the messianic era, because there's nobody here, you see. And the only time the Rebbeinu Shem will do that is if the Mashiach is right around the corner. Yeah. And I believe anyway. What?
It's so interesting that these past few parshiyot, Vayechi, Yaakov wanted to reveal when the Mashiach was coming. And even the Haftarah is about Yirmiyahu warning of the destruction. Everything has something to do, don't worry, but after Hashem will take you back and bring you the redemption. Everything is talking about it this past month.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is
there a correlation? I don't know.
Yeah, all of this is very timely. Like I said, all of this is very timely. And also...
So Rabbi, so I mean, okay, let's fast forward. When Bnei Israel actually, Hashem splits Yam Suf, what could we expect there?
When
you know what I mean?
No, I didn't get that.
When we read it in the parasha that he splits the Yam Suf, in our lives, could we maybe try to expect maybe that's when the Mashiach will be released?
Well, like I say, there's always, of course it can always be possible, because the Yam Suf was in many ways the end of the Klippa, but they still had to go to Matan Torah. But the real end of the Klippa of that particular Klippa, which is the Bechor of Egypt, was Yam Suf, because that's when he took out Egypt. That's what he says to Moshe, or Moshe says to Klal Yisrael, these people that you see today, you will never see them again. Well, that means that the Klippa of Mitzrayim, who used to be the Bechor, is gone. They will be terminated, you see. Now, as far as that's concerned, now we don't know. We have to see. Certainly this week and the next week will be critical for what's going to happen to America. These 2 weeks coming up are going to be incredibly critical. What's going to happen to America?
How about with the Shovavim? Can you tie it in with the Shovavim?
Yes, the Shovavim also is a very holy time. Exactly, because it's Shemois for era. Shovim, a boy b'shalom.
Yisro
Mishpatim. Exactly, yeah. And the Shovim is Geula. It's a time of tremendous kapara and Geula. Yes. So you can add that to
Rabbi,
the list.
What is this week in the Shovavim that we're supposed to work on to repent on? What is the second week stand for? Do you know?
The thing about sexual immorality, he said, was
no,
the
that
second
was week
no?
one. That was week one.
Because that's the major klipa of Egypt.
Nida.
You mean the first week, right?
Second
the first
week is
week
Nida.
They said is sexual immorality, and the second week now they're saying is Nida.
Nida, okay. That's all part of it. A Nida is not immorality because the Isa Nida is basically even with one's wife. So it's not immoral, but there's no question it's a forbidden relationship, So that would be a next higher step. First of all, so immorality is where you have to avoid a sexual promiscuity with any women, and then Nida is with one's wife if she's a Nida. So it's sort of like a closer one to Kedusha. You see what I'm saying? So each week there would be a step that is getting closer and closer to Kedusha.
Is there anything that we should be doing during these weeks that correlate to Shovavim that we should know about?
I think everybody's walking around in a daze. I have people call me up left and right. They're all walking around in a daze. So what I tell them is this. I said, look, in the end, you have to have bitachon. You have to realize that God knows what he's doing, right? And not only that, but kol milsa de'ovid rachmona, everything that God does is the tav of it. He's got his hands, so to speak, on everything that's happening. Nothing can happen unless it's part of his plan. And his plan ultimately is Geula, to redeem the Jews. You see? Look, what you are watching is the windows closing, which I spoke about. You are watching, evil grow and grow and grow until finally there's a tiny micro gap that is left. You see? And if that closed, then there would be no shefa to the bria, to creation, and the whole creation would disappear. So therefore, we are watching the darkened windows where no light can come into the room at all, except a tiny slit. You see? And like I mentioned, the reason for that is because you have to do what I call tachas b'noi. You need to accelerate the process. And that process is to give evil its due. You see? Because you need to satisfy justice, which I'll talk about more next week, and so on. And that's why evil grows. You are watching that. This whole business where America is about to be turned over to evil, that's exactly who they are, tremendously evil people, right? You are watching, the windows closing more and more. Listen, this has all been predicted. Look, if the Gemara Sanhedrin, the Gemara Sanhedrin, in the last Perek Chelek, it talks about what will be before the Mashiach comes. And it says many, many things, but they all add up to one theme: disaster. All of it. There won't be any money, there won't be any Talmidei Chachamim, there'll be an incredible amount of gaiva. When you look at all the predictions, of all the Chachamim, the Amoras, yes, and the Tanoim and so on, they all add up to one idea: disaster. So what does that mean, disaster? Why is everything bad? And the answer is because that is the windows closing. That's really what it is. They're just describing, in what form does it come out that it's all dark. Okay, so you have all kinds of bad news. Economic disaster, sickness, death, dever. I once mentioned in one of the Shurim, which I gave, is that the Midrash says that before the Mashiach comes, there will be a tremendous dever, plague. COVID. Yeah, it says that. COVID. And that's all part of the acceleration of suffering, But all of it spells one thing: disaster. And that's the concept of the windows closing. Except the Gemara talks about just different forms of how it closes. That's all. And that you're exactly seeing that. You are seeing disaster, whether it be COVID, whether it be, Biden and Harris, whether it be what the Congress just did, which is an incredible betrayal of justice, because they know that the Constitution of the federal and of the state has been violated, and they have done nothing. You see, even if there was not fraud, which we know there was, but everybody knows that there was a violation of the Constitution. So how do you do nothing? How do you not send the ballots, or rather the electors, back to the states? You don't, because they're all Rishoim. We are looking at a den of evil. That whole Congress is evil. It's incredible. They've made a mockery of justice, you see. And this is, so you're watching what used to be the United States. You're watching a restoration of the evil of Esav coming back. That means that the window is almost shut. That's what's happening. So why should we be surprised? But we have to understand that. That's the beauty of Hashkafa, is that at least it explains what's happening. So at least you don't walk around in a daze, everybody else is walking around in a daze because what do they know? But the concept of the window closes, that evil must proliferate at the end in order, right, to accelerate the process of tikkun. Because without that, there's no tikkun. And God is not going to bring the Mashiach until the tikkun is complete. The same thing happened in Egypt. He had to do the straw, gzera, in order for the tikkun to be complete, right? And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu can now begin the makot. Same thing. It's the exact same repeat, which is what I gave in this year.
But Hashem brought the Tov be'esav. Why is he bringing now the Rasha of Esav? He wanted to bring Donald Trump to Tov. Why is he going back?
Well, if you remember, what I gave at that shiur, I said Hashem brought Moshe Rabbeinu, didn't he? That's a lot better than Tov Shebe'esav, and he still stopped it, right? He still stopped it. Even Moshe Rabbeinu didn't understand, and he went right back in the Shemot. He went back to the Rebbeinu Shalom saying, Loma hareoisu loma zeh. Why are we doing evil to this nation, right? I mean, he's the man appointed Mashiach, yet he did not understand that you need what's called Pachas Benoi. You can't just take Yitzchak off the altar, the Mizbeach. There has to be another sacrifice, which is, I quoted these Midrashim and so on. You're looking at the same thing, You can't just redeem the Jewish people. Evil has to have its due, and the Jews have to atone for everything. They have to complete the job of tikkun. You see? Look, I often compare it to Chevle Mashiach, right? Birth pangs of the Messiah, right? Look, I don't know because I don't give birth to anybody, right? But you're women, you all have kids, right? You can all identify with Chevle Mashiach, right? Right? For 9 months, it's been glory. You're expecting a child and so on, right? And every once in a while, kid kicks. You feel the kid. And all of a sudden, in the end, right, this kid is like, what's happening here? And you can imagine what the infant feels. It has no idea what's about to happen. All it knows is that its head and its body is being squeezed. So if the kid is thinking, which maybe it is, we don't know, it's probably saying to himself, wow, this is terrible. Until now, I was living in the Hilton. I had everything. And now all of a sudden, I'm being ripped apart. I'm being squashed at every side. Looks like it's over with, right? And all of a sudden, the kid pops out into an unbelievable world. You see? That is what Chevle Mashiach is. And guess what? We are watching, right, the birth pangs of the Messiah, which means that the Mashiach, it's Klal Yisrael, because that's what the infant is. We are being pushed into the canal, and it's terrible, you see? So everybody's walking around in a daze, but guess what's going to happen? All of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's almost like it happens, suddenly. There it is. There's the light, you see? And that's what's happening now.
We're all going to know when the light appears? Like we're all going to feel it?
I suspect that there will be some type of sign, at least to arouse a suspicion that something is different. In the beginning, it'll be called what's called diffuse. It's not clear, it's not crystal clear, but I think everybody will begin to see something different, that maybe something happened. There will be some type of an event that people will realize, wow, something is going on, you see? And then slowly that will grow. In many ways, it's compared to the sun rising. First you don't see the orb. You see the dawn. You see the light. And you begin to realize, wow, there's light. And it's getting bigger and bigger. But the interesting thing about it is that, okay, there's more and more light, but you cannot realize that what's about to burst forth is a orb of a sun. Now, the sunlight is much greater than the dawn. Means the dawn is a phase of light, right? And then all of a sudden, there's a light from the sun. There's no comparison between the light of dawn and the light of the sun, you see. And that's what people will realize. First, there will be some light. Slowly, there's a diminishment of evil. So there's light. But nobody understands the amount of light. And all of a sudden, the Mashiach, you see, when he appears, it is the sun appearing, you see. And that is Mashiach ben Yosef, as the sun rises. But when it hits what's called the meridian, which is the zenith, that's Ben David. And that is spectacular, you see. So if you want to look at it, you have these three phases. You have the light of dawn, then you have the light of the sun until midday, and then you have the sun at midday, which is the most powerful light of all, and that is Mashiach ben David. You see? So you can use this as a good example. What was that?
Is Mashiach ben David alive?
Probably.
Does he know? Inkling?
No, not yet.
No, not yet. Ben Yosef doesn't. No.
So
he may
David has no idea.
Well, he may suspect.
He probably has a sign.
What?
He probably has a sign that he's not the normal person.
Exactly. Yeah, he's also suspicious that there's something that makes sense here. Yeah. You
So, do you think...
Rabbi, what do you think...
You go, Renee, go.
What?
What do you think of, Rabbi, that we're telling you, if it's really true that it comes down and out, that the Pope has been arrested for all this bad stuff, and that the Vatican was behind the voter fraud of the election?
I'll tell you, look, Christianity in the end has to fold. We all know that, right? But you can't do it so quickly. Why? Because when Christianity folds, what are all the goyim going to do? They're going to come over to Judaism? That's very dangerous.
But I thought before Mashiach, they had to admit that Yahadu is the real religion and Hashem is the king, and that's what has to happen.
Yes.
Am I wrong?
Well, I believe that Christianity will not fold or fall until the Mashiach. You see, because Judaism cannot handle an influx of 2 billion people. But if what you're saying is correct, and I find that hard to believe, I'll be honest with you, that they arrested the Pope, if that is true, then that is the beginning of the end of Christianity. Because that will be the greatest downfall of Christianity. I mean, what happened with the Catholic Church in terms of the pedophilia, that itself destroyed so much of the church. But the fall of the Pope, that would be cataclysmic for the church. And you're talking about 1 billion Catholics. There are 1 billion Christians, of which 1 billion are Catholics, Roman Catholics, which means they follow the Pope. The rest are Protestants or other denominations. That would be cataclysmic. So I don't know if that's true. I would find that very hard to believe that he has been implicated in so many crimes.
Well, the only thing that they did come out and they said was his doctor had died of COVID, which that was broadcasted on mainstream media the day after the Vatican was in a blackout.
Yeah.
But they're saying that they may use that as an excuse, as the Pope is not doing well because the doctor exposed him to COVID, and use this type of excuse. Whether we really know what happened to the doctor, we don't know. He may have been taken in for custody because he knows too much information, or killed, or who knows. We don't know.
Yeah.
But the mainstream media, even CNN, posted that his doctor died of COVID. So clearly something is up, that it happened right the night after the Vatican had a huge blackout for 2 nights.
Okay. We have to wait and see. But, like I say...
I have a question.
Yeah?
If the other religions do fall, will the Messiah be like there? Because, not for anything, I feel bad for them. Imagine your whole life you believed in something.
Yeah, I know. And all of a sudden, it's a mirage. Yeah.
From you, and talk about being lost, right? So will they have the opportunity to turn to Hashem, not as a religion to practice in Judaism, but at least to put their faith there? You know what I mean? Just for the comfort of it.
They will. Yeah, they will. But in order for that to happen, there has to be a tremendous infrastructure that can accept. You can't make people sick without a hospital. You need to build a hospital first, right? Then because where are they going to go? The same thing. There has to be some type of an infrastructure, which is a messianic infrastructure, before the religions collapse of the world. The Russian doesn't want to leave the world in a state of tremendous confusion and depression. You'll have a lot of suicides.
Yeah.
So there has to be. I don't believe that will happen until the Mashiach is aware of who he is and is able to build a real infrastructure where the people who realize that they've been misled for all their lives, which is terrible, right? There has to be some type of remedy for these people. You see? So so that revelation to these people will happen as part of the messianic era. Yes. You see.
Do you feel like it's like Makat Choshech, that the news is not telling us what's going on and they're leaving us in the dark?
I don't know really what's happening. The things that you're saying are extraordinary. And, in terms of Trump, the Pope, Italy, it's extraordinary stuff. I don't see why nobody's reporting this at all.